Orcas in the Pacific Northwest are occasionally killing porpoises, and we don't really know why. Welcome back to Tea of the Sea, and you guys know that I love killer whales. And over the last 10 months, I have very periodically talked about individual killer whales and the different types of killer whales, specifically the transient killer whales and the southern resident killer whales. The transient orcas are the ones that I see all the time. They are the mammal hunters. Seals, sea lions, porpoises, and other large whales are on the menu for this ecotype. While, by comparison, the southern residents are strictly fish eaters, hunting pretty much exclusively Chinook, also known as king, salmon. However, since 1962, several times a year, the southern resident killer whale population is observed chasing, interacting with, and killing porpoises and then not eating them, and we don't understand why. The orcas will chase the porpoises around. These are harbor porpoises and Dall's porpoise. They will hold them in their mouths, lift them out of the water. In some cases, they'll actually toss them around and slap them with their tails. And unfortunately for the porpoise, this often ends in the end of the porpoise's life. Now, before I continue, it is important to note that the southern residents aren't the only population of residents off the eastern Pacific coastline that are seen doing this behavior. The other two types of residents, the Alaskan residents and the northern residents, have also been seen doing this behavior with porpoises, but they seem to do it very rarely, whereas the southern residents, by comparison, do it a lot more. And a study that was released at the end of October this year looked at the possible reasonings for why these orcas are doing this. The study looked at 78 different encounters of this behavior between 1962 and 2020 and basically cataloged all of the details of this, the age of the individual orcas that were involved, which pod they were part of, the sex of each individual, and things like that. The study found that when it came to the age and sex of the orcas, it was pretty consistent. It seems as though all sexes and all ages will participate in this, but they did notably find that 4 killer whales, 3 of which were female, seem to have an affinity for this behavior, which each individual displaying this behavior 5 separate times for the encounters that were studied. The biggest question for this behavior is, are these orcas eating these porpoises? They are not. Orcas are very, very picky eaters. If they are raised on a certain type of food, in the southern residents' case, Chinook salmon, and occasionally other types of salmon, they will not eat anything else outside of that food source that they were raised on. They don't view anything else as food. And the study found no cases where the orcas actually consumed the porpoise after they killed it. They just left the carcass and swam away. The study did identify 3 different possible explanations for this type of behavior. The first one being playtime, the second time being target practice, and the third time being a behavior that's called mismothering. Mismothering is when a female of a species will adopt another member of a different species, and this has been observed a few times in killer whales. The most notable case of this behavior was back in 2021, which I actually talked about at the beginning of this year, where a female orca off Iceland was seen with a pilot whale calf riding in her slipstream, which is usually only reserved for calves. The southern residents, in particular, when it comes to survivability of calves, is not very good. Around 70% of all of their calves do not survive their first couple of years. So it's possible that these mothers are taking out their motherly instincts on these porpoises, which are around the same size as a newborn killer whale calf. The target practice explanation also kind of does make sense. The orcas seemingly go after really small porpoises, juveniles, and things like that, which are notably about the same size as Chinook salmon, which is what the southern residents are eating. So it's possible that the orcas are using these porpoises as kind of a moving target, so they can practice catching up to quick and maneuverable prey like salmon. But in my opinion, it seems as though it's playtime that explains the best of why these orcas are doing this behavior. Killer whales are incredibly intelligent, incredibly affectionate, and very, very playful, especially in the wild. And it makes sense to me that these orcas are seeing a porpoise not necessarily as another animal that can take the abuse, but just a toy, kind of like how cats will play with mice. Interestingly, the orcas have been observed lifting newborn orca calves out of the water, kind of playing around a little bit, and as the calves grow, their siblings will roughhouse and tumble around and play, and it's a super fun privilege to watch orcas do that, which I have observed directly before, of siblings rolling around and playing. And like I said, it's possible that the orcas are viewing the porpoises as kind of a toy and just kind of playing around and having fun. Unfortunately for the porpoise, when you have a multi-ton animal tossing you around and slapping you and holding you underwater and biting and doing all that, unfortunately for a 150-pound porpoise, it's not going to end very well. Now, what I'm most interested to see is as the southern residents continue to struggle finding enough food to stay well fed, which if you want to learn more about that, go look it up. I've talked about it extensively. Will this behavior maybe morph into more hunting behavior? Probably not, because of the ingrained culture of orca societies when they're being raised on a specific type of food, but it would be very interesting to see if that were to happen. I should also note that the study is only looking at these explanations as possible explanations. There's still so much we don't know about this particular behavior, and we nearly need to observe it a lot more to really try and figure out what's going on. It just shows how complex these intelligent animals are and just how much more we need to learn about them.